Welcome back to the arena. This is Squider Dragon again with episode 3 of the Strixhaven free-to-play series. This video is going to cover two of the color quests. The blue has already been completed, so we just look at the deck. Blue is a fairly easy quest, relying on a lot of these flyers. Unsummon, quite a key card as well. Wall of Runes, Scry. A good combination, but the key to this deck and the easy route to complete the quest was the flyers in particular. Card draw, some removal. Didn't use the sleep, but it's a useful card. Card draw. The Windstorm Drake was pretty powerful, comping all the creatures. Soul Blade wasn't used. Overflowing Insight, massive card draw. Wind Reader Sphinx we did use in a couple of the matchups where the card draw with multiple attacking creatures was pretty useful. Overall, as the complete deck, this is quite a strong deck, or competitive at least. During the blue quest, I completed 2 quests, both with blue, so that gave me access to 1,000 gold, and obviously 1,000 experience earned me a deck, so there's a couple of packs from completing that blue quest. And here are some of the cards that have been collected. I also redeemed the free play, 3 free packs that come out with a set. There's normally a code and you get 3 free packs, so those have been redeemed as well. So this is just showing you some of the cards that have been opened. This is the Strixhaven cards. So we see we're starting this Strixhaven collection. Not necessarily using them yet. It's probably a bit early, but we've made a start on building our collection. We didn't have any mythic rares yet. It's a bit early for that, so we've had a good few rares, and this is just a sample of the uncommons. Particularly as a free-to-play player, you'll be relying on your commons and your uncommons, and we've seen those in impact in these color quests. So particularly in these early stages, building decks out with commons and uncommons is necessary, but some of those uncommons in particular can be quite powerful in terms of making the deck work, making it competitive. Here we're looking at the cards that are potentially from Strixhaven that may suit our white deck that we did in the first color quest. We have some lands creating 2 types of mana, which can be useful for when we get on to look at multicolour decks, 2-colour decks, etc. And then we're having a look at the blue cards, since we've also done the blue quest, so we have a few blue cards. Maybe not necessarily suitable for our deck yet, it's a bit early, but it just gives you an example of the cards we've already opened. We have a new quest for playing 25 lands. We have a 250 win bonus if we can win the match. Taking a quick look at the mastery track, so we were up to level 4, and you see that earned us another pack. So we've at this stage completed 2 of the colour quests, white and blue, and we're now going to pick the third one, which in this case I've decided to go with red. We changed the avatar. We started off with white because we were playing a white deck. When I did the blue quest, I changed it to Jace as a blue planeswalker. It doesn't make any difference, it's just for cosmetics really. So when we have the avatar, it's useful to have the right coloured avatar so that we can track, we know which colour quest we're running. So changing this to Chandra for the start of when I select it, a little bit out of order. So if we go in sequence, it would be black, but for this quest, I'm selecting red, hence the Planeswalker, Chandra and Nalar that we've selected are updated. So again, we'll do a similar thing. We'll play through the quest. The first 4 quests, battles we'll have will be against these standard Planeswalkers. So we should be familiar because these matches will be similar. So we should know what to expect. So playing the Blue Mage using the Jace from the AI. So we've seen this red deck a couple of times now, so we know one of the features of it is coming out with these quick, sharp creatures. So we start in a similar vein, so we get 2 Tin Street Cadets out. They don't have haste as yet, so we bring out the second one, the first one can attack. We also have token generation with the Goblin Gathering, which creates multiple total tokens. And this has got a neat effect because the more of these you cast, i.e. that are in the graveyard already, the more tokens you get. So initial casting, the first one we get 2 tokens. We'll see in particular with this red deck that having these cheap multiple tokens coming out is important for the deck's main win condition with this setup, because it relies, as we'll see. So what I do is you can see there, because I've created, I'd already had one in the graveyard, I've now created 3 instead of 2, and then if we had another one we would create 4, etc. So just keeps getting more. So we have some blockers 0-5, but you know it's not killing anything from our side. And now the computer puts down, the AI J's character puts down 2-1-3, so decent toughness, and it's got 1 attack. So when we attack, we will lose. But the feature of this deck, as we'll see, with so many tokens out, and now with Raid Bombardment, all of these tokens are obviously less than 2. So anything up to 2 that we attack with, we get this trigger. So you can see this key win con with having that raid out and multiple tokens. We finish this match fairly quickly. So that can work quite well. It shows you that if you have the right deck and you're facing an opponent who's a bit slower, even with big blockers, having the right enchantment with a lot of tokens out can make short work of this match. So again, it's just getting used to some of the mechanics. So we'll see in the red deck, there are different strategies being used as we've seen in the other decks. There's not just one, what would be termed win condition. Sometimes there's multiple ways, or there's multiple spells you can use in combination to create the win. So part of the challenge of Magic the Gathering, particularly when you're getting used to it and playing free to play, is getting used to those and just playing around with them. Sometimes they're more intuitive, other times they take a bit more getting used to. Above all else, recommendation again is read the cards, read and understand what they do, try them out if you're not sure, and before long you'll get used to all the cards. So again, the second matchup, slightly slower start, but we start off again with having 2 of these 1-1s. You see we've got 2 raid bombardments. So we need our third mana, which we get. So we cast out the first of those, and having multiple of these on the battlefield makes a difference because each of them triggers separately. So where I'm attacking here, I'm holding back for the minute because we don't have enough creatures on the board. You see our black opponent, Liliana Vess, starts churning out these 2/2, which are tougher than our creatures. But as we've seen from the last match, we're more reliant on having enough creatures out and using these so-called raid bombardment triggers that each time. Now you can see here, this is another neat trick, something that the deck's probably designed to do for the challenge. So we can remove one of those 2/2s with a simple 1 mana shock cost. So it's again this thing about the mana advantage. And then there you see we start attacking in because we've moved the blocker. Now we get a much bigger creature, but our principle is the same. There's a feature again with these tunnelers. These tunnelers allow a creature to go through unblocked as long as it's power 2 or less. So in this case, we don't want to necessarily lose the cadet by giving it unblockable using the tunneler's ability. You'll see these are tap abilities, so to give it that ability I need to tap the creature so it's not attacking, so I don't get a trigger from it. But the advantage here is I can profitably attack, get these triggers that we can see, and I'm not losing anything because the creature is unblockable, despite the fact that there's quite a bit of power on the board from the opponent's side with the 2/2 and the 5/5. So fortunately for us, although he's attacking in with a 5/5 and the 2/2, the next threat he put out was only a 1/1. We have a haste, what's called a haste creature, which means when it comes out it can attack. Here what I should have done, there's a mistake here, because what I should have done is given the haste because it's doing 2 damage, unblockable. But as you'll see, we still attack with it. We get all these triggers. So we leave the AI component Liliana Vess, despite the fact that she's got these big creatures in the board, and in 2 cases she's got bigger creatures than us. But again, from a tempo point of view, this is an idea of tempo because we were able to deliver fast attack damage, which is a feature really of red, mono red, to have these abilities that very fast creatures. And we'll see that again in the other matches that we play. So there's enough triggers there. In fact, the computer will check when the life hits 0, so it doesn't let all those triggers run. Is enough to finish off that match. Fairly one-sided so far. I think again we come up against, I think it's against white. There's a little bit more of a challenge. I think I took about 2, maybe 3 attempts. But again, it's what I was saying in the last episode. It's about, again, from reading and understanding the cards, it's coming up with the right tactics, what the cards are doing, working out what the win condition is, and then once you have that sorted out, and it might take you a few attempts going through just trying different strategies, and then once you have the tactics sorted out, i.e. what the cards are doing and how to use the cards together, the strategy is about playing at the right time. That becomes important as well. So you'll see, I think this match against green, I think, was relatively one-sided. So again, we start off with a simple start. We had the shock to take here. The reason I shock the creature is it's what's called a mana creature, a mana dork, it's also referred to. And what that means effectively, it acts like extra land, so it can be tapped for land. What that means is that the opponent gets an advantage on being able to get bigger creatures out. And that's a feature, obviously, as I explained before in an earlier episode, that one of the features of the colour green is to get big creatures out. Sometimes they take a bit more mana, but having ways to get to that mana quicker using these mana dorks. I put a link out on the colours and their different strategies of the colours of Magic, so when you have some time you can check that out and you'll get to understand the design principles behind initially what the colours are. These days in Magic, because it's been going for so long, a lot of the colours can do similar things. In the early version of the game, certain features like lifelink were tied to white predominantly, but these days you find most creatures have the ability to do similar effects, maybe not as efficiently as some other colours do. So you've got life gain, for example, in other colours. And red, as I said, having haste creatures, direct damage meaning a spell that can damage directly either a creature to take a creature out or directly to a player. And you see we close out this game because we have the hasty, another feature of red, haste creatures to finish this off. So we go into, I think this is the fourth quest before we do the player versus player match, and I think this was either 2 or 3 attempts. So again, we've got some new creatures added to the deck, different strategy needed this time, so it was working out the strategy. So again, it's a case of reading the cards. The only way to kind of learn this stuff is to read the cards, and if you don't necessarily understand first time out by playing these color quests, reading the card, and then assuming that most of the cards are fairly self-explanatory. Some of them you might have to try out just to make sure you understand what they're saying. So again, we against the white opponent, we've seen this creature before, the double striker, so we get attacked before we've even got our defences up for 2 from a 1/1 because it's got double strike. But now we have these Molten Ravagers. Now these Molten Ravagers have a mana ability, so we're able to increase their power. But for now, they act as decent blockers, and you can see the double attack from the 1/1 is not sufficient enough, fortunately, to kill the 0/4. So 0/4 is a decent blocker, certainly at the early stage of the game. We also have a raid bombardment. We can see how powerful that can be. A raid bombardment can trigger off the 0/4s even though they haven't got any power, because it's about attacking with the creature. But as you'll see here, at this early stage, rather than attacking and generating these triggers, and it would only be one set of triggers, 2 damage in effect, it's more important at this point in time with the fast aggressive strategy. So the tables have turned a little bit. It's now white that's playing the aggressor, bringing out a lot of these cheaper creatures. And in this case, with the 1/4s, the 1/4s would be able to, if we had goblins, for example, would be able to block and kill a goblin. As it is, we still just have these 2 0/4s out. But of course now our opponent has 3, they've got the 1/1 double striker and 2 of these 1/4. So again, we just got the 1 raid bombardment at the minute. There is another one in the wings, which might be useful. But as I said, I was still working out the strategy here. We still have this attack coming in, so I wanted to keep these 0/4s black for the purposes of blocking, minimizing the damage. we're still quite a good life total, but it's going to start mounting up. We know another feature of the white deck, having played it, is it has flyers of its own that might become a problem, and it's also got creatures that can give them life, so some of our triggers might not be enough in this case. Certainly we don't have enough creatures out. At least we have 2 raid bombardments, so we'll get double triggers, but the purpose for now is to still try to minimize this damage that white keeps continually putting out. Here you can see what I'm doing is pumping up using the mana ability. And what this means now, if I block with a 3/4, at least I get rid of I will kill the double striker, although it's doing 2 damage. Our creatures have got 4 toughness, but now it has 3 power, which is enough, obviously, to take care of the fencing ace. So we're still at this point relatively stable, 15 life. We now have this big dragon, we've got the mana for it, we cast it out. Doesn't have haste, so we can't attack with it, unfortunately. Again, the tunneler can give unblockable, but at this point in time, no attack. And here you see we've got the Spiritual Guardian, card that we've seen before when we were doing the Nicol Bolas quest, the very first quest. And we see that gives our opponent, a Ajani Goldmane, 4 additional life with the ETB. Remember the acronym ETB, into the battlefield effect. It was a mistake for me there not to attack, as you'll see in a minute, because what white's able to do is to cast pacifism. So this is a good example, as I said, of this is a good example of card advantage. So we had to put 7 mana in to cast a dragon that, because of the mistake I made in not attacking last time, hasn't even had a chance to attack. And now, just for 2 mana, to our 7, the opponent locks it down with pacifism. So it's a good example of trying to get these small advantages. Again, it's like, I keep on using chess analogies. When you play chess, you can get an incremental advantage, like maybe positional advantage, but when you get material advantage, it's like going a pawn up. So it's a similar thing with Magic. If you can get small increments in terms of either card advantage or just using your creatures more efficiently, or building your deck so that you can meet a bigger threat that casts the opponent more mana, and you're able to deal with that with a cheaper mana cost, you've gained effectively a mana advantage, and that small increment can be enough to get you closer, if not over the line, of actually finishing the game. So sometimes Magic is played at margins. You'll hear the famous expression, it's okay to be at 1 life as long as you're still winning. So, and again, you'll see in certain situations, sometimes you'll use life as a resource. It's another resource, don't forget about it. But we haven't really come up against a situation where we would spend life to come up with a game-winning impact. We might see that in the future, but it's not a feature for this particular series of colour challenges. So here you see I'm activating. Again, it's a bit of a mistake here, because with the raid triggers, The right strategy here would have been just to pump the creatures to 2, so they're doing 2 damage, and then using the tunnelers to make them unblockable. So that would be 4 damage going through, but we've got the triggers as well, so that would have done quite a significant amount of damage. But because I overpumped an attack directly, and there you see one of the consequences of that is it's allowed white, with all the mana he has, to come up with this big flyer, something that I referred to just a minute ago being a threat. My shock 2/2 isn't really going to do much. Certainly can't take out the 5/5 clearly. What I try here is a trick similar with tactical advantage. My idea is putting enough mana into this thing to attack, and if it's blocked by the 5/5, even though I might not be big enough. So you see, I get it up to 5, so attacking with 5, hoping that the opponent blocks, and you'll see, unfortunately, he doesn't. If he did, the 5/4 would have killed it, and then we would have given us maybe time to get this damage, particularly where we have this direct damage to face. But the problem is the 5/5 threat still on the board. And it's not as if we're drawing into a lot of little creatures that we can attack with to generate enough triggers to win the game. And you see that a lot of this comes back to this fact of this very cheap 2 mana spell to take out our 7 mana cost dragon. And as you can see here, if I was, for example, drawing into a haste creature, that would have been more useful. As it was just another land. At this stage, the land can be useful because I can obviously pump it into the Ravagers, but at this point in time, particularly now, there are 2 flyers, and we've got the 4/4 that's just come out. So, although it has summoning sickness, remember, a creature with summoning sickness can still block, it's just that it can't attack until the next turn. So, and we're already at 1 life, so it's already lost in effect. So the strategy is still clear. The interesting thing to know, now we know the opponent, and again, typically the sequence of spells probably, because it's a challenge, unless we get to the last match, which is player versus player, so that's kind of randomized, but the pattern will be the same. So one of the things I need to learn from this first match is that when the dragon comes out, I should be attacking with it the first opportunity I get. So at least when it gets tapped down by the pacifism, at least we spent 7 mana to do hopefully 5 damage, which is a decent enough trade-off. So again, if you think about the mana advantage, we had to pump a lot of mana into 7 mana, but the 7 mana was able to give us 5 damage, and 5 damage is pretty decent normally. So let's see in the next match if we've learnt. So we know we're going to say the same sequence, so it's a case of just, as I said, the tactics at this point are known. Here you see that we have the pack reward. Again, it's just from the experience from the pack. So we've earned a pack, which we can get to open. So again, this is our second crack. Now that we have a bit of a strategy. or what we think is our strategy sorted out. So back to the starting point. So we know the fencing ace is going to come out and attack. But we can't do anything about it, so we're down to 18 already. But now we have a defender in the 0-4 Ravager, Molten Ravager. We know at some point in time, if we have a look at our mana, so for now, we're using the Ravager just to block. We haven't got the raid bombardment out anyway at this point. And again, like previously, rather than bringing the raid bombardment out, I think it's better to install or cast another defender. So up to now, we've been meeting the opponent's threat with our own threats, or our own defense, should I say. But as we'll see, our opponent keeps on casting out these 1-4, and we know pretty sure that he'll have other cards. And of course, we know there's a flyer somewhere in our future. So that's something that's going to give us a problem if we haven't already got the upper hand. So you see what I mean. I attack this time just for 1 point of damage if we've only got one raid bombardment out. I left the other one back so I can use it to block the 1-1. There's no mana to pump into it because it's already been spent. So it can be useful having a lot of mana, but then when you're pushing your mana into these creatures, the Ravager for example, it means that you haven't got that mana available for other purposes. So that's something to watch out for. So again, attacking with the 0-4, there's no power for the 0-4 to do any damage, but what it does do is trigger the raid bombardments. And as you'll see here, I do have open mana, and you'll see why that's important with the ability of this creature, because now what I want to do is to finally take care of this 1-1. Arguably I only needed probably to put in, make it 2-4, but there was no other use for the mana at this point in time, so just sank all the mana into the Molten Ravager. We get another land. In some cases you might want, and this is same stage, we have the dragon coming out. We know that's got a limited shelf life, but unlike the first time we saw this, when I get my opportunity, I am going to attack. I probably should have kept the tunneler back. It did give us an extra trigger, so I lost the tunneler for the impact of 2 additional life, 2 damage. But what's important now here, and again at the man, well, the dragon's flying, so it's not worth, probably what I should have done here, well, yeah, I think if I attack and make it strong enough, which I've done, to a 4-4, it doesn't trigger, oh no, it will do, sorry. It's just the tunnel I can't make it unblockable. But yeah, the attack, you see, triggers the raid. And I've attacked with a dragon this time. You can see the opponent's got one card in his hand. So again here, I'm just navigating using this spare mana to take his creatures out. I've still got my 5/5, but as we expect, the pacifism comes down to lock it down. But at this point, with the extra mana that I have available to pump in, and remember I've got the triggers from the raid bombardment, so what I need to do, I need to be careful that I don't overextend. I've also got the blocker. What I could have done is just pump all the mana into the, and then made it unblockable, but remember it's only creatures power 2 or less. So this is why I only put 2 mana into this creature, but of course that's enough. I'm doing 2 damage and then I get 2 damage from the triggers. That's unblockable. I get 2 triggers from the raid, and the 2/4 finishes it off, and that's what we call in Magic the Gathering terms exactsies. So it's exactly 0, sufficient to kill the opponent. So again, you can see this kind of thought process about these challenges, but as a general principle in Magic, it's working out what cards you have. You know, first of all, tactics. Tactics are really what the cards do, and tactics might be what the cards do individually, but also in combination. But then once you have the tactics sorted out, your strategy is how do you use that at the appropriate time, on the appropriate turn. And again, as I said before, Magic the Gathering in a lot of cases is about making decisions, and making the right decisions at the right time. Timing is important. So again here, this is our final match against the PvP player. Interesting, it comes with a white avatar, so typically against red, white, particularly if it's got life gain, can be an issue because you can be doing a lot of damage, but of course if they are able to gain life, that could be an issue. But we do have these goblin gatherings, so we know if we cast one, we'll get 2 tokens, and if we cast the second one, we get 3 tokens. We also have the ogre battle driver, so we're still mana away, but 1 additional red mountain will give us enough mana. But again, the goblin gatherings are useful, but again, in terms of tempo terms, they can be a bit slow because we're having to get to turn 3, assuming we're casting 1 mountain a turn before we cast the first one. So again, it's some of the feature of Magic. Some decks can be faster, some decks can be slower. We have seen a faster start from the red deck, but that's because we had 1/1 creatures that we could cast out for 1 mountain. So you see here, at least when we get to our turn 2, and again, feature of red, it's got haste. So on turn 2, I'm able to cast out a 2/1 haste creature and do my first damage to the opponent, bringing him to 18. I'll be able to play the mountain on my next turn, and at that point in time, decision again, do I create 2 1/1 tokens, or do I put out defense with the 0/4? So you'll see here what I decide to do is go aggressive and put just what's referred to as power in the board, even though it's only just 2 1/1s. Again, it's having read the card, knowing that I can, if I get a raid bombardment in particular, but even for now, You see what the opponent does. The opponent's already at turn 3. He hasn't really, in effect, he's cast a card that has a future effect in the battlefield, but it doesn't have an effect now. It's not really impacting the board at the minute. So these goblins that I've cast, and you'll see now I have the mana and the ogre battle driver. When I create creatures in the battlefield, they all have haste, so they don't suffer from summoning sickness. So this combination between the ogre battle driver's ability, which is again, he's a more powerful card, but I need to wait to turn 4 to cast him out. But the advantage it gives me is that where I have cards like Goblin Gathering, they can create creatures. Those creatures, when they come onto the battlefield, will immediately be able to attack. So in this case, I'm not relying on the Raid Bombardment enchantment, even though it's in the deck. We just haven't drawn it in this particular match. But instead I'm using an alternative strategy, just to have faster creatures that can come out and attack as soon as they come out. You'll see they get pumped up as well with the Ogre Battle Master. So again, quite a good finish. Part of that is because our opponent was playing a much slower deck, a green deck, looking for big creatures, but didn't get around to casting any significant threat. Therefore, we take the match relatively comfortably with that final player versus player matchup. And we unlock some rewards in addition, and we've completed the deck, having beat the player v player match. And that completes our third colour challenge. So 2 to go. Next episode I will probably run both. Hopefully they don't take too long, but that will then take us in a position where we've completed all the 5 colour challenges, and in particular we then have access to these monocolour decks for doing our quests. So whatever quest comes up, whatever mana is designated for the quest, we will have a deck that will be appropriate to take it on. So we get some more tooltips. You can see we still have the green and the black quest to do, which we'll do in the next exercise. So just at the end of this, just having a look at our completed deck, we can see the cards that we've already seen in action. So notice it's important in terms of the way the deck's built. It has more than one approach to winning. So we can either be casting a lot of fast creatures, we can go a bit slower and wait for something like the battle driver, or we could be relying on the getting the raid bombardings down and faster creatures. Now that's purely dependent. The deck has that capability, but it comes down to purely the luck of what cards are being drawn at the right time. So on these quests and that, I think particularly until you get to the player v player, I think at the point of player v player you're near enough unlocked, so you've got kind of more tools, as it were. But yeah, so typical red deck, and again this is what would fare as a starter deck. There's a lot more sophisticated and powerful red decks. So we have our 2 packs, one from the quest. Remember we did the land quest, and we've probably earned one of those from the experience track. So again, opening here, I think both of my rares or lands. Sometimes that can be disappointing, but of course it might pay dividends in the future, but typically you're more excited to see like a more powerful like creature spell or some more spell than just a land. Land's important in Magic the Gathering, but it's not necessarily the maximum excitement if land is what you're opening. So this is just reviewing the Strixhaven collection in particular, and particularly looking at what red cards in particular. So you see I've selected red, and we also have the enchantments or the artifacts indicated. So, and you can see some of these have called that mana symbol with the red white means that can go in either deck. It's got a little hybrid mana, so it can be a cast in either turn. So that was the latest episode. Thanks for watching. This is a quick review to see where we are in the reward track. So we've got up to there. The next thing would be to have this mastery orb, which just ends up adding a cosmetic on the mastery tree. Quick look at our profile. We still have our red. We'll change that for when we do the other quests. And there we can see a summary. So I can see here, if I continue to play on, that 115, if I won a match, I would get 100, but of course it relies on wins. It's just not just enough to play a particular colour of deck. So that was the latest episode. Thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.